Hey ladies, I hope you're having a great Tuesday and that you had a good weekend. My weekend was spent just relaxing because it seems like during the week we're constantly going and we just don't have that time to relax. So if you have school age kids, taking them to practices, chorus, all the different activities, and then they come home and do about 2 to 3 hours of homework and it's just nonstop, and then you go to bed. It's like that all during the week, during school year. I don't know if the other moms feel the same way, but that's just how I feel. But this week I posed the question, what's with all the negative? And that is the title of this podcast episode that I wanted to talk to you guys about. The way it came about was this weekend, and a lot of times during the week and several times during the day, I check my group with the women that I speak with that are suffering from child loss and they're struggling with it and they're trying to rebuild their life. I go in there constantly and I'm always checking because it's kind of crazy. There are people that come into the group, say that they have children that have passed away, but they don't, and they come into the group to try to scam these individuals in the group, which is really, really crazy, and that's kind of off subject, but I do that every week, and I also check my posts, because obviously I run ads for my book, Momma, You Don't Heal, and I check just the comments on there as well. And this week there were so many negative comments, not negative comments about the book, but negative comments about child loss. And basically the gist of those comments were, I'll never get over my child loss. It doesn't matter how long it's been, you're never going to get over your child loss, and just all the never, never, never. And every time I see one of those comments, I always hide it. And it's not the fact that, it's a negative review or it's anything negative in general on my book, but the way that I look at it is these women that are putting these comments down, and they're at different points in their child loss, and there are, different things that are going on in their life, and I understand that. But for the woman that has just lost a child, and for the woman that is seeking some kind of goal in the future, some kind of dream, like, okay, there is light, I can rebuild my life, I can do these things even though I've lost a child. It is just so negative for them to see that, because what do? When they see those comments, then they go, oh my gosh, Becky is 10 years into her child loss and she says, I'm never going to get over it. I can't do this. That my child loss is always going to be with me. I'm never going to be happy again. So anyway, that was a long story to go back to. I think we need to talk about negative words. I had always wanted to talk about negative words in this podcast, and it was one of my topics that I did want to talk about. But I think right now, just after seeing that this weekend and just thinking about like the negative words that we put in our mouth 24/7 and we put in our mind every day, it was time. It was time to talk about it. So this week we're going to talk about what's up with the negative words. So I am going to nerd out on you guys a little bit, so bear with me during the nerding out on you guys, but you guys know that I love psychology and the way that the mind works. So there was this bench study that was done. And basically, it was a bench study. They talked to a bunch of people and they followed them. And basically, what it found was that 50% of the times the words that we're speaking out of our mouth are negative. They're completely negative. You have 30%. They found that 30% of the words that you talk about are positive. And then you have like these 20% of words that are kind of like neutral. They're not negative. They're not positive. And just reading that and seeing that, I'm like, holy crap, you guys, we most of the time put this negative in our mind and our words without even knowing it. And that's one of the things that this bench study showed, was that we think our bodies are made up and we think negative. Our words coming out of our mouth are negative, more 50%. So 50% of our day, what we do, we speak and think negative. And that's horrible. That's horrible to even think of that. And like I said, that was one benchmark study. I'm sure there's 100 out there, but this was just the one that I was looking at. So I'm going to talk about the brain in front part, back part, and that's just the easiest way to say it. Basically, you want the front part of your brain to be working more than the back part of your brain, okay? So the front part of your brain, that's all your positive stuff, okay? That's your positive thoughts. That's the way that helps you with executing your goals and helps you with organizing things and just helps you to doing all the positive things in life that you want to do, those goals, those different things. Then the back, I'm sorry, my child is home because I had to stop everything I was doing to do this episode. So back to the episode. So if you see her, that's what's going on. But anyway, the back of your brain, okay, that's all your negative stuff. That's the stuff you really don't think about all the time, but it's still back there. And basically that back part of your brain, without using big, huge words, it's basically the back part of your brain when you're thinking with that part, or when you have just shit back there in that back part of your brain, it is associated with fear. And what does fear do? We talked about this before. Fear is what stops you from doing anything in life. So you want the front part working. The back part, you don't want to fill it with the negative stuff. And that's where the negative stays. And like anything in life, basically, you want to think positive, because the more and more you tell yourself positive, that's the affirmations and everything that you do, the more you tell yourself something, no matter what that something is, you're going to eventually start to believe it. And that goes with the back part of your brain. That's that part of your brain that you're not even thinking about, but you are thinking about, because it doesn't go anywhere. It just stays back there. So when you're triggering with those negative words that you speak, and the negative words that you're speaking are usually I can't, I won't, I'll never. There are so many out there. Those are the ones that come to my mind the most, and the ones that I know people use all the time, because I'm guilty of it too. I can't do that. I'll never be blank. I'll never be able to blank. And although for myself, I've done like a lot of things that people told me I couldn't do, but I still have to check myself. I have to check myself daily, monthly, to see where I'm at, to see where my mind is at. Am I putting more negative thoughts into my being, or am I putting more positive thoughts into my being? And it's not something that you can do really easily. I'm not going to lie. It's not. You can get into a group of people, and it's all about who you're with too, because I can get into a group of people that are total what I call Debbie Downers. And we can be Debbie Downers and talk about, most of the time people talk about work. Everybody hates their job most of the time. It's very rare that you'll hear someone that actually loves their job completely. But you talk about negatively about the job and how it's never going to change and how it sucks when this happens and it does this and all the things that we talk about. And then what does that do to you? Then you start stressing out and getting anxiety, because those are two things that come out from anything negative spoken. You get anxiety. You get stressed out because you have to do so much in one day. An example that I think of off the top of my head was when I was in college and I was doing all of this stuff for college, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have this 10-page paper due that I'm never going to be able to finish on time. So then I sat there and I stressed out about that 10-page paper, which in turn I did not start it because I procrastinated, because I didn't think I was ever going to get it done. So then not only was I anxious about having to do this paper, I procrastinated about the paper, and then I started to stress out about it that I was going to fail a class. Can you see the spiral down that it goes? Every little thing that you choose in life to do. I can remember different times in my life, and I'm sure if you really think about it, those deep, dark times in your life, obviously, my child loss was one of it is the deepest, darkest time that I ever had in my life, and it's the only dark time that I'll have in my life. And I totally believe that there's nothing in my life that will be as bad as that was, and that's the way that I live my life today. But I can remember having those dark days, and I was extremely depressed, and I would had anxiety, and I was stressed out, and I didn't want to do anything, and it just seemed like everything was negative. And my negative thoughts added more negative thoughts, which added more negative thoughts. So I urge you to think about your negative or those dark times that you had. Think of how much negative you were putting in your head. And a lot of times, the sad part is if we sit back and think about it, a lot of times we don't even know that we're having these negative thoughts. Isn't that crazy? Like when we say I can't, I won't, I'll never, those things like that, when we're putting that in our head, we don't even know it's negative, and we're just saying it. We're just saying it. A lot of times, I think back to high school when we were young and dumb and doing like all the little girly things, and you wanted the boys to like you, and you're just like, hee hee, I can't do that, da, 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 or whatever it was that you were doing, and we're putting all this negative. So in turn, when the bigger things come, it's like, I can't do that. And you think, no, that was different, and that wasn't the same. But it is the same because you're putting in your mind that you can't do something. And I think a lot of people put limitations on themselves because of the fact that they tell themselves they can't before they even try. And it's so sad because I believe that you and everybody out there that is trying to rebuild their life, that is trying to put themselves at that shiny object that we've talked about before, that want to get to this shiny object, but they put up so many roadblocks before they can even get there because they're telling themselves they can't before they even start. Or they've had something negative in their life and something that didn't happen for them. And gosh, there's so many things in my life that did not happen for me that I thought was it, that was it. But even though I didn't do those things, I still tried again, and I still tried again. And here I am today, not to rain on my parade and say that I'm like in the best place ever, because I'm not. There's always room to grow. But that's just an example of how one person did it. And I can guarantee that you don't even know that you're doing it. And that's the sad part of it, is like we don't know we're even doing it. So I want you to think this week about all those negative things that you say on a daily basis and try to change the way you think of it. I can't write that book because I don't blank. That is usually what it comes after the I can't, I won't, I'll never. There's always that excuse. That negative word brings on that excuse to stop you from doing exactly what you want to do. I will never be the manager because I'm a female with kids. That is something that anybody can really relate to. But how do you know you're not going to be one day? Because what I see when I say that phrase to you is you putting limitations on yourself about what not to do extra or what not to do to make it to that spot. Because you're putting that negative in there, so you're telling your brain, well, we don't need to try on this. Let's just move on to the next thing. And whatever that next thing is, and usually that next thing is not getting towards that shiny object that we want. It's getting towards sitting and scrolling social media all day, or sleeping, or doing a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, I love to sleep, but there's good sleep and bad sleep. So if you're sleeping more than you possibly or should be sleeping, that's not good. Same thing as I love scrolling social media. I love laughing. I love watching right now all the little scares going on because it's that time of year. And I love seeing all that stuff. But I have to put limitation on. I have to put a limitation on it. And the same for you. So this week, I want you to sit back and think how much negative you're putting in your head for everything in your life, you being a mother, your career, your husband, or your significant other that you're married to. What kind of limitations are you putting on that? And I can tell you right now, I put limitations all the time in my life, but I have to check myself. And it's not something that comes easily. I've already said that, but it's not something that comes easily. But what you can do is be more aware of what you're saying and what's coming out of your mouth every day. And once you become aware of it, you can change that. You can change that phrase of, I can't be the manager of this company because I'm a woman and I have kids. You can change that to, I'm going to be a manager of this company. What do I need? What steps do I need to take to get to that goal? And start working towards it. Because it goes all back to what we talked about earlier. Back part of the brain, subconscious stuff that you're thinking about, fear. And what does fear do? It stops you. And it's so funny how every little thing that we break down usually goes back to some kind of fear. Why do you think I talked about fear so early on in this podcast? Because it's part of it. And no, we're not bound to say, today's the day I'm never going to think negative again. I'm never going to be negative, Debbie Downer again, because that's not humans. It's just part of rebuilding your life and rebuilding your life the way you want it and having a more mindful life, I guess you could say. It's all just part of it is knowing, I'm thinking negative, I need to do something positive, whatever that positive is for you. But I urge you to just be alert and be conscious of everything that comes out of your mouth from now on. And if you're thinking more negative, start to think about, how can I think more positive? How can I change what my view is and go for the positive? And that goes back to the whole thing is, if you want to change your life and you want to make your life better, it starts with you bound and determined and saying, you know what, today's the day that I'm done with this. I'm done with the way I'm living. I want to live that shiny object, that serenity dream that I've always wanted to live. And today is definitely the day. From this day forward, my life is going to be more towards my shiny object, my serenity dream, and I'm not going to sit in the spot that I've been sitting in for blank number of years, however long you have. I urge you to start thinking about Debbie Downer, that phrase, Debbie Downer, and I say it all the time. I was talking to Debbie Downer. But are you the Debbie Downer? Or are you just listening to it? Because listening to it still does basically the same thing. If you surround yourself with individuals that don't share the same goals, and I'm not talking about the same goal as in, I'm going to be a CEO of a company, I'm going to be a podcaster, I'm going to be whatever that is that your serenity dream is. I'm not talking about hanging around those people that have the same exact goals as you. But are you hanging around people that are most of the time 99% negative? Because when you hang around those people that are negative, that have those negative words flying out of their mouth and everything, they're the person that when they call you go, shit, they're calling again. I'm just going to tell them I can't talk. Because I know I have people like that I have to be in the mood to talk to them, to uplift them and that feeling that comes over me when they call. It's just dark. It's just negative. It's just, I don't know how to explain it, but I know you ladies have experienced the same thing I have experienced. You just, that person. Are you spending your time with a lot of people that are like that? Because if you are, and you're trying to rebuild your life and you want to have that serenity dream, you have to cut them off. You have to decide that today you're not going to deal with that anymore. Today you have to decide that your life and your peace and your serenity dream is more important than Debbie Downer. And I know that that's hard because if you're like me, you have people that are either family or really close friends that you've had for a really long time. And I understand that you can't just drop family, you can't just drop friends, but you can limit their ability to put negative in your life on a daily basis. And maybe that's what you need to do. And I have people in my life that, like I said earlier, I have to limit to a certain amount of time, to a certain point. And other than that, I have set boundaries. If I don't want to feel negative, or if I don't want to have to be extremely positive and talk this person off of being negative, then I don't talk to them. And that sounds so selfish sometimes, but it's not selfish. And you have to think about it as it's not selfish if you're helping yourself, if you are making sure that you're okay. You're checking your mental health. And if you're checking your mental health and you're checking your positivity and it is still good, then there's nothing wrong with that. Because what is it? You have to make yourself happy before you can make your significant other, your family, your children happy. You have to come first. And as moms and as women, we, most of the time, I would say 99.999% of the time, we decide to put other people happy before ourselves. And take it from me, who has been to that deep place, I had to learn how to put myself first. And that's not meaning that I don't do things for other people, that I only do things for me. I guess that's the easiest way of saying it, because I do things for other people. I'm a very caring person, and I'm a very loving person, and I give a lot to people. But I have to make sure that I'm okay first. I have to check myself. So that's a new word for this week. Check yourself. And once you check yourself and you're like, you know what, I'm all right, then you can add all that other stuff. But that was kind of a sidewall conversation. But back to are you hanging around with the negative people? If you're trying to rebuild your life, what you need to do is cut those negative people out. And if you can't cut those negative people out of your life, you need to limit how much they affect your life. So if you are hanging around negative people, it's time to find new people. There are people all over, and there is social media, and there are ways to meet people and to get along, not to get along, to get, I say get with, but that's kind of a weird phrase, but there's a way that you can do life and meet people that share positivity with you. And that sounds like to me, that sounds so green, and I'm not cutting down people that are like green people or anything like that, but that sounds so like, I don't know, maybe cliche, hang around positive people, but you will see a uptick in your mood, your anxiety, your positivity. You have to knock that negative out and find people that share the same positive, the same view of life, that they have serenity dreams, they have mindsets that they want to rebuild their life to be more positive and to get that shiny object. Those are the people you want to spend most of your time with. again, they might not have the same exact dreams that you have, but just the positive uptick. And they don't have to be like the person that's always like, you can do it, June, you can rule the world or whatever. I mean, not like that. I'm just talking about positive people in general. And I have one friend, and she is the most positive person that I've ever met in my life. And like the world could be ending and she's still positive. And I don't know how she does it, because she is so much better than I am about it. And she just every time is so positive. Yeah, she has bad days, but I don't even say bad days, like bad moments with her. And I strive to be more like her personality, because she's always so positive. And I can remember when I first met her, I'm like, this bitch is so fake. I thought she was so fake, but she's not. That's just who she is. And I've known her for 12 years now, 13 years. I mean, I'd really have to start doing the math. I've known her for a really, really long time. And that's just her. That's who she is as a person. And I try to find and surround myself with more people like her, because she is so positive in my life. And I have other people, but just her in general, she's just awesome. She's just an awesome friend to have, and I'm so glad that I've had her as long as I've had her in my life. But those are the people that you want to meet. And you're going to meet a lot of people when you're rebuilding your life, and when you're trying to change your mindset, that aren't positive. And you might meet these people that you're like, oh man, this person's great. And, months down the line, you're like, oh, that's just, the bitch is fake. Just, and you move on. I mean, you can drop them. But those people that you have that are what I call in your corner, that have this mindset that life is worth rebuilding, that life is worth being happy. You want to keep those people in your life, because those people are the people that you're going to grow with. You're going to grow old with. Even though I was watching something the other day and millennials are talking about their old, I'm like, Jesus, you're talking about your old. What does that make me? But, yeah, just getting those people and having those people in your life. And the good thing about it is like, once you find one of those people, you keep them close to you. And then you go along and you found another one, and you keep those people next to you. And then you go along, and eventually you're going to have this big group of friends that are just positive. And they're not those Debbie Downer friends that you used to have. And it's not easy. I said it, like, I think this is like the 50th time I've said it in this podcast. It's not easy. Rebuilding your life and changing your mindset is not easy, but you have to make that decision to do it. So this week, the thing that I want you guys to do is be mindful of all of the negative that is coming out of your mouth. Whether you can't do something, you won't ever do something, you'll never... And there's so many negatives out there, but those are the ones that I just come pop in my head 24/7, just because of everything that I've done in my life. But I want you to be conscious of that today, this week, and just see how many times that you're negative. And when you're hanging around your friends, your coworkers, your family, is it more negative coming out of their mouth, or is it more positive? And see what you see. See what you find out about your life in general in just 1 week. Just 1 week. Do it for 1 week. Try it for 1 week. See how much negative is in your life. And once you recognize that, then you can change it. Because that's the problem, like we talked about earlier. Most people don't see it. Most people can't see it, so they don't know to change it. They don't know that that's a problem, but they all they see is like they're not reaching their goals, and they want to go so many places and do so many things, and they're not reaching them, and they don't understand why. This is part of it. This is part of it. The negative words, the negative friends, the negative things that we think about ourselves. the negative mindset. It all goes back down. Go back to the bleh. It all goes back to the negative mindset. So think about it for a week. Look at it. Examine whatever you want to call it for a whole week. I want you to do that this week and recognize it. Write it down. I love writing things down. I need to talk about that too, what that does to your mind. But write it down. Write down every time that you run into something negative, or jot it down in your phone notes, or a lot of times I talk into my notes so I don't actually have to write it down, because a lot of times when I'm thinking, I like to think when I'm driving, which that's probably not a good thing, but that's what I do. And I can't sit there and text it while I'm driving, so I talk into my phone. And so identify all those negative times in 1 week. Just in 1 week. Or do a tick mark, like a tick mark. I don't know if everybody still does this, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and then cross it out. That makes 5. Like, how many times a week are you thinking negative? Or how many times a week are you hanging around people that are negative? Do that for a whole week and examine it. And you decide. You decide whether you need to move forward and rebuild your life without those negative things in it, or whether you can keep those around. And I can guarantee you think more negative than you actually even know you did. Because what I can tell you this, once you start recognizing it, and once you start placing yourself away from all of that negative and all those negative things, that's going to change your life. I'm telling you right now, your attitude's going to be better, your depression's going to be better, your anxiety's going to be better, your stress is going to be better. Trust me, it's amazing how something as little as recognizing how negative you are with yourself can change you. And then after you do that for a week, and you look at it after that week, I want you to think about all those negative times, or if you actually wrote out what the negative thing was, how can you change that to a more positive? Because once you recognize it, you have to change it. Because if you don't change it and you keep acting and keep doing the same things that you're doing, then you're never going to rebuild your life the way you want it to be. So once you recognize it, you need to change it. So I said one of my negatives was, I'll never be able to write a book, because my teacher in high school told me that I couldn't read and write. Yeah, that actually happened to me. But when I changed my mindset to, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway, guess what? I wrote a book, and it's doing really well right now. It's all in the way you think about it. And until you change that mindset, you recognize it, and you change the way you view it, you can't rebuild your life, and you can't change your mindset. So number 1 this week, what I want you to do is I want you to write it down, identify when you're thinking negative. And then the second thing I want you to do is I want you to look at it and see how you can be positive. And if you have like a problem with, this is the negative way I'm thinking, I don't know even how to think of it positively. If you're not at that point right now, I have an email address. You guys can email me anytime. I have a Facebook group, Women Surviving Child Loss. But I also, if you haven't lost a child and you're just trying to rebuild your life, you're a mom and you're trying to rebuild your life, I have a business page, The Serenity Dreamer. DM me. I answer that stuff. I look at that stuff. I told you earlier, I look at it daily. Not every hour, but I look at it often, because I try to get all the negative out of the group if it's posted in the group. So I'm on there a lot. You can email me. I check my emails several times a day. Probably too much that I don't need to be checking it as much as I'm checking it, but I do check it very often. It's kind of OCD checking it. So you guys can email me. There's tons of ways that I could help you try to work through it. And this is just one step. So, hey, I'm thinking this negative thought, how can I change that to a positive? It just takes like a few seconds, and then maybe that will click in your head and you can move on to the next thing next week that we talk about. Or go back to fear because you're having some fear issues. There are people out there that can help you, and they do it for absolutely free. You don't have to wait a week to go to a psychologist or a therapist or whatever, wherever you're going. There's people out there that'll help you. And so I'm telling you today, if like you're thinking all this negative and you don't know how to change to positive, email me, DM me. I have Instagram too. You can message me on Instagram. There's tons of ways you can get in contact with me. I can help you. If there's nobody to help you, I can help you. Because the biggest thing in life for as women and for anybody that does any kind of coaching or anything in general, coaching, the speakers, authors, anybody that does the nonfiction self-help stuff, we want you to get where we are. We want you to get to be your best self. We want to help you rebuild your life. And that's why we do it. That's a lot of times why all of us out here do it, is because we want you to be happy. We want you to find peace, because guess what? Life is way too short. Way too short. So find somebody. And like I tell women all the time, if I'm not your person, you're not my tribe, that's okay too, but keep looking until you find that person, because there is a person out there that can help you. There is a person out there that is perfect for you that you're going to get. And that's what we need to get to. So with that being said, sorry, I had that little rant and we're going over on time. I try to keep them about 30 minutes, but think about that today. 2 different things. Identify your negative, and number 2, think how you can do positive, how you can change it to positive. Well, number 3, if you don't know and you need help, contact me, contact someone that's positive in your family, in your friend circle, that's in your tribe, and let's try to figure it out this week. Don't go another week not knowing how to change it to a positive. So with that being said, that's all I have this week. I hope you guys have a good rest of the week and your weekend is great. If you want to support me, obviously you can go to the Serenity Dreamer and pick up my merch. Or if you want to pick up a copy, the easiest place to send you guys to is to Amazon to pick up a copy of my book, Momma, You Don't Heal, or a copy of the workbook that I have out now. It goes along with the book, and it's called, it follows the Momma, You Don't Heal, the first 90 days, and it's a workbook that you can work through as well. But with that being said, you guys, please take care, be safe, and be brave, my warriors.